Have you ever noticed it subtly? The way her tone changes, her eyes shift, the way she responds just slightly differently. It's barely noticeable, but you feel it. Modern men are being softened, slowed, stripped of their edge, not by force, not by manipulation, but by subtle cultural and relational expectations. Here's the hard truth. A man who doubts himself is a man she can steer. A man who over-apologizes is a man she can override. The question is, how did we get here? And more importantly, how do you break the pattern before it becomes the new normal? Point 1. Erosion of masculine pillars. Traditionally, men were wired to lead, provide, and protect. These pillars aligned naturally with male psychology and purpose. But modern messaging, social norms, subtle critiques, and societal expectations gradually teaches men that strength, assertiveness, and confidence are too much. This isn't a sudden blow. Emasculation is gradual, like a slow leak in the foundation of a house. At first, you don't notice it. A comment here, a suggestion there. Over time, the foundation weakens. Story time. I worked with a client, David. He always prided himself on taking initiative, planning dates, making decisions, leading in his career. But after a few years of subtle messaging from friends, partners, and culture, he started second-guessing himself. He hesitated to make choices, apologized excessively for asserting preferences, and found himself shrinking without realizing it. Insight. Weakening men creates control, emotional leverage, and freedom for women. It's not that women are consciously manipulative. It's that male self-doubt leaves a vacuum they naturally benefit from. Point 2. Shift in relationship power dynamics. Here's the next layer. Men who doubt themselves become over-apologetic, over-adjusting, and easily moldable. They give up subtle authority in the relationship, often unconsciously. Women, sensing the vacuum, step forward, not maliciously, but naturally. They fill the space left by hesitation, decision-making, emotional leadership, even financial initiative. Suddenly, she's taking the reins. Example. My client James would continually defer choices to his girlfriend, restaurants, weekend plans, even minor disagreements. Over time, he noticed she was leading almost every dynamic, making choices and guiding outcomes. James hadn't realized it at first, but his emotional uncertainty created freedom for her. Insight. Emotional leverage grows the more a man weakens. The more he doubts himself, the easier it becomes for her to navigate and influence the relationship. Point 3. Historical and systemic influence. Now, let's zoom out. Modern systems, welfare, child support, and certain legal structures often remove dependence on male strength. Women gain stability without needing a strong man, and this subtly shifts perceived male value. This isn't about politics, it's about psychology and dynamics. When systems provide safety, the male role becomes optional, negotiable. Men may feel indispensable, but in reality, their influence is quietly eroded over time. Story. I had a client, Ryan, who was frustrated in his relationship. His girlfriend had financial independence and social support, which left him questioning his role. He noticed that in every disagreement, she had an easier time asserting her preferences, not because she was dominating him intentionally, but because the vacuum allowed her to benefit unconsciously. Insight. When a system replaces certain male roles, women unconsciously gain leverage. The dynamic shifts naturally unless the man reclaims authority within himself. Pause for a moment. Think about areas in your life where you've noticed yourself shrinking, emotionally, socially, financially, or relationally. Are you giving up influence without realizing it? Are subtle expectations guiding your behavior instead of your own judgment? Drop a comment below. Naming where you feel softened is the first step toward reclaiming your power. And if this resonates, hit that like button. Share it with a friend who's noticing these subtle shifts. They need this clarity more than they know. Next, we'll explore how modern consequences and psychological exploitation amplify this dynamic, and why men unconsciously enable behaviors that benefit women, sometimes without anyone intending harm. Then we'll dive into practical steps to reclaim your authority, voice, and direction, so you can stop being a passive participant in your own life. All right, so now that we've seen how masculine pillars erode and how relational dynamics shift subtly, it's time to look at the modern consequences of these patterns and how men unconsciously enable them. Point 4. Modern consequences and psychological exploitation. Here's the reality many men overlook. The weakening of male authority doesn't just affect relationships. It creates a predictable, exploitable pattern. Weak men seek validation. They post online, they comment, they overshare. Their emotional longing, need for approval, and uncertainty create opportunities. Women often benefit unconsciously, financially, emotionally, and through attention, without any malicious intent. Think about social media: likes, comments, messages from men craving approval. Women receive attention without effort. Emotional leverage exists naturally when male vulnerability meets female instinct to respond. Story. I had a client, Alex, who constantly sought validation from his ex through texts and social media. She didn't manipulate him intentionally, but his overinvestment gave her leverage. She could dictate the pace, engage on her terms, and remain in control emotionally, all unconsciously. Insight. Emasculation creates predictable, controllable behavior in men, which women can, and often do, exploit unconsciously. Point 5. Reclaiming power. Now, here's the good news. None of this is permanent. Men are not naturally weakened. Emasculation is conditioned, not inherent. And the moment you understand that, you can reclaim your power. Here's how. 1. Recognize the conditioning. Understand that societal messaging, relational dynamics, and systemic influences have chipped away at your authority. Awareness is the first step to freedom. 2. Reclaim boundaries, voice, and standards. Stop surrendering authority. If you consistently act from your center, setting standards, keeping boundaries, and asserting your voice, you restore influence naturally. 3. Rebuild identity from purpose, discipline, and direction. Influence follows leadership. Lead yourself first. Financial, emotional, and personal discipline fortifies your presence. Women's systems in society respond to men who lead themselves. 4. Stop handing over power. Strength cannot be stolen if you don't hand it over. Over-apologizing, over-explaining, or seeking validation is voluntary submission. Awareness removes the mechanism. Story time. A client, Marcus, realized he had been subconsciously over-adjusting in his relationship for years. By reclaiming boundaries, asserting his voice, and refocusing on his goals, he didn't have to control her. The dynamic shifted naturally. She respected his presence more, and his attraction increased. Insight. Your power is reclaimed internally. External systems cannot permanently remove it. Authority, voice, and influence start with self-leadership. Here's the twist most men never see. Men don't lose influence because women are intentionally domineering. They lose it because they allow themselves to be softened, shaped, and guided by expectation, culture, social norms, and subtle relational pressures. Over time, the dynamic flips. The man becomes accessory, the woman becomes decision maker. Attraction, leverage, and influence are lost, not through external force, but through internal surrender. Awareness plus action equals the solution. By recognizing conditioning, reclaiming boundaries, and asserting direction, men stop the silent erosion. Emotional leverage shifts back. Attraction flows naturally. Influence is restored. Story. Jake had always deferred in his relationship. Subtle comments, societal expectations, and relational patterns made him doubt his role. Once he implemented self-leadership, set clear boundaries, and reasserted direction in his life, the power dynamic reversed. He wasn't controlling her. He was simply holding his center. She responded to the authority and stability he naturally exuded. Insight. Attraction and influence are restored when a man leads himself first. Systems, culture, and relational dynamics can shape behavior, but internal authority is unstealable. Ask yourself, where have I allowed myself to be softened or guided unconsciously? Which boundaries have I surrendered without noticing? Where is my voice missing, my presence quiet, my leadership absent? Comment below. Naming your areas of unconscious surrender is the first step toward reclaiming authority. And if this resonates, hit that like button. Share it with someone who might be unknowingly giving up their influence. It can be life-changing to see the pattern clearly. Next, we'll tie all the principles together, summarize the 5 key lessons, and give you actionable steps to reclaim internal authority, restore influence, and navigate female psychology with clarity and confidence. All right, by now you've seen how emasculation happens. Not overnight, not through force, but gradually through culture, systems, and relational dynamics. You've seen how male authority can be quietly eroded, how women can unconsciously benefit, and how over-apologizing, over-adjusting, or seeking validation creates a vacuum that shifts influence away from men. Now let's close the loop. It's time to tie everything together and show you how to reclaim your power. Conclusion. 5 core principles. Here's the framework you need to understand to stop being softened and start leading yourself. 1. Emasculation is conditioned, not natural. Men are not inherently weak. Modern culture, subtle expectations, and relational dynamics shape behaviors. Awareness is the first step to freedom. 2. Weakening men creates unconscious benefit for women. When men doubt themselves or surrender authority, women gain leverage, not necessarily intentionally. Emotional vacuum equals natural benefit. 3. Vacuum attracts influence. Someone will always step in when power is absent. If you retreat, influence shifts to whoever fills the space, often unconsciously. Modern systems can shift male value. Financial independence, social safety nets, and legal structures reduce dependence on men, subtly lowering perceived authority. Men must reclaim personal influence internally. Power is reclaimed internally. Boundaries, voice, and purpose restore authority. External systems cannot permanently remove your influence. Lead yourself first, and everything else aligns naturally. Core insight. True power isn't taken, it's owned internally. When you lead yourself, you naturally lead the dynamic. Actionable advice, step by step. Here's how you implement these principles in your life today. 1. Recognize conditioning. Observe subtle messages in your environment, relationships, and culture that have chipped away at your confidence. Awareness is liberation. 2. Reclaim boundaries and voice. Stop surrendering your authority. Speak clearly, act decisively, and maintain standards without over-apologizing. Boundaries are your personal power structure. 3. Rebuild identity from purpose and discipline. Focus on career, personal goals, emotional mastery. Influence follows leadership. A man who leads himself first naturally attracts respect and admiration. 4. Stop handing over power. Avoid voluntary submission. Over-explaining, excessive approval-seeking, or over-investment gives leverage away. Power cannot be stolen if it's not surrendered. 5. Observe, don't react. Emotional stability is magnetic. Hold your center, pause before reacting, and maintain calm presence. This creates natural influence and attraction. Let me share a story. A client, Daniel, came to me frustrated. Over years, he had noticed himself shrinking in relationships, apologizing for asserting preferences, deferring decisions, and constantly seeking validation. Modern social norms and relational patterns had conditioned him to soften without realizing it. Once Daniel applied these principles, reclaiming boundaries, asserting voice, and refocusing on his goals, the dynamic flipped. He didn't need to control his partner. He simply led himself, and the respect, influence, and attraction naturally followed. The vacuum he had unknowingly allowed to exist was now filled with his own authority. Insight. Authority and influence start internally. When you lead yourself first, external systems, expectations, or relational dynamics cannot erode your power. Now it's your turn. Comment. Where in your life are you ready to reclaim your power? Share your awareness. It's the first actionable step. Like, share. If you've ever felt softened, over-apologetic, or lost influence without realizing it, like and share this video. Someone in your circle needs this clarity. Subscribe. If you're ready to learn how to maintain internal authority, navigate relationships confidently, and reclaim influence, hit that subscribe button. We're here to guide you step by step. Remember, men aren't naturally weakened. Emasculation is conditioned. Weakening creates unconscious benefit for women. Vacuums attract influence. Someone will always step in. Modern systems can shift perceived male value, but internal authority is untouchable. Power is reclaimed internally through boundaries, voice, and purpose. The moment you stop surrendering authority, stop over-apologizing, and stop seeking validation externally, the dynamic changes. Influence, attraction, and respect flow naturally because you are leading yourself first. This is not about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself. And once you do, the world around you naturally aligns with your internal power.